Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scouting Session, episode number 4 for this season. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and I'm joined by Brad Allen. Hey, Brad, how's it going?
We're tired, Jerome. That Jays
Yeah.
game that lasted a lot longer than expected. That's where I'm at. I feel like I have an anvil in my head today, and that's the first like full baseball game I've really watched in the last 20 years. That's like gone through extra innings, really. Like
Yeah.
I watched 2 games of the Mariners series, and I watched the World Series so far. But that was the first game where it was like going extra there, and I must say there is some crossover to hockey where you see some bizarre decision making. Listen, I'm no expert in baseball in any capacity, but the fact that it took them that long, Shire that long, to figure out that he had intentionally walked Otani is, I mean, he makes over $1 million US to make some decisions. So I'm just saying, like, it's unbelievable what you see when it comes to the mental glitches sometimes under pressure situations.
Yeah. I like you, I've not watched baseball a lot in recent years. I think hockey is taking a lot of the of my time. And in the summer, I don't really want to be in front of a television. So like I was a huge baseball fan when the Expo were in Montreal, and since then it's been. But I did watch yesterday, like a lot of people, and I feel like I'm 98 years old today. Like I'm dead
It's
tired.
it's tough. The 5, 6
Yeah,
a.m. is not easy for us anymore. Oh my God.
yeah. All right. So for this week episode, we're gonna keep going on our 2025 draft review. This will be the last episode we do on this. So we did the first 3 division. So today we're gonna do the Metropolitan Division as our last episode on it. So Brad, let's start with the first team we're gonna review. The Carolina Hurricanes. So I'm gonna share the screen here just take a look at what they did last year. So, all right, this is what they did last season. Very interesting draft by the Hurricanes. As always, they always have very interesting pick every year. So maybe first take Brad on their picks here. Um, Lots of pick actually we like. So
As usual.
Frolov, yeah, lots of Russian as usual. Frolov, Ryabkin, Limitov, Bosov, all 4 Russian. All 4 of them, you can make a case, did fall a bit in the draft. Maybe not Frolov as a goalie. It's tough really to predict where goalies will go in the draft. But Ryabkin, big time drop. Limitov, I mean, according to us, he was a first round pick. A rated player, so that's a big time drop. And Bosov, maybe a bit of a drop here. So maybe Brad first take on what they did. Obviously, Charlie Serrato was a guy he's not Russian, but we really had him, I believe, around 40 on our list, and looks pretty good this year, to be honest. So he's making us look good, and he's making the Hurricanes look good so far this season. So, Brad, I'll give you the time here to maybe your first take here.
Yeah, I mean they had the most Carolina draft they could possibly have. Like this is everything that they do. They never have top picks, so they have to have guys follow them, and then they extract the Russian talent that falls, and that's what they've done. So Frolov was our third ranked goalie, and he was the third goalie who went in the draft, and they absolutely needed a goalie in their system. And they got him, and they got a heck of a talent. Like Semyon Frolov, talent wise, is right up there with Ravensburger and Andrionov. He's just a bit more raw mechanically. So it's one of those situations where he might need a bit more time, but the upside is 1A all day. Like he could be a top 20 goalie in the NHL for sure. So it's I love the pick. It made all the sense of the world from an organizational perspective, but also made sense in terms of like draft order from a goalie position. Charlie Serrato, as you mentioned, like this was a player we're very high on. I had him early 30s. Like I really like this player. I had him top 32 for a bit there. I think I moved him back to 33 at the end, but this player is more than the sum of his parts in some capacity. So, not the quickest, most agile skater, not very nimble. I think that's one of the main reasons he was looked over and has been drafted as an overager. But the skating power has significantly improved over the last couple of seasons, which has allowed him to take off developmentally here in this last year. He was a massive difference maker for Penn State. He plays a supercharged, in-your-face, tenacious style of hockey, but he's also a gifted playmaker who can make his teammates better in transition. And his handling, although it's all over the map, he could be a bit raw and experimental at times, and his execution rates overall within his handling isn't at the level it needs to be. But the experimentation and the playmaking upside is definitely a plus, and he's fearless. So although he doesn't have the best consistency with his shooting ability, he can get net front, and that's going to make a difference when it comes to being able to still score some important goals. And he's a forechecking machine, a back checking machine. He can actually defend. His block rates were exceptional as well for a center, and he was good in the draw. So this is a very well-rounded, versatile center who plays exactly the way that Carolina plays. It makes a ton of sense when you watch how Serrato plays this heavy forechecking north-south game, and has the intensity that you see with the Hurricanes currently. Ryabkin, we talked about the fall internally for us. We had him. What do we have at the start of the season, Jerome? We had him top 7, 8, didn't we? He was high.
Yes, we did.
Right. So he was the biggest faller. He was basically the Atu Ratu of this class, really. This was the faller of this class. And the reason why is he looks incredibly junior when he came over to the USHL. Couldn't score in the MHL, and then he looked ridiculously junior in the USHL. The huge thing about this player is how bizarre he really is. In some ways, you could say he doesn't compete at all, and then in others, you say he competes too much. I call him a proximity hitter. Meaning that he doesn't have the skating ability to really take a run at you, but if you enter his vicinity, he will hurt you. That's what he he's like a cactus. Don't get too close, but if you can just avoid him, you're good to go. So it's one of those situations where he has a lot of potential, but he has to clean up so many parts of his game. The skating has to come miles. The thinking, his how he thinks the game. He thinks like a junior. He loves making abstract, high danger plays in the wrong parts of the ice. And then there's times where he's just way too quiet. Right? And that it's a result of the fact he just doesn't have the conditioning, doesn't have the skating, and it's quite frankly out of shape. So he has to rewire himself a little bit to become a pro long term. But what do we talk about, Jerome? Carolina, they're going to take the best player available. That's what they're going to do in terms of talent. That's what they did. Ryabkin was easily the most talented player available at 62, and they took him. Kurban Limatov. Now, this is a situation for me where I feel like, I'm sure you'll agree with me here, Jerome. If he played on the London Knights, does he fall to 67?
No.
Probably not. Right? Let's be honest here. Doesn't leave the top 45. 6'4", defenseman, toolsy, incredibly powerful, who showed a very impressive development with his offense. Looks like a potential two-way force. The only reason that he dropped to the third round is because he was over a Dynamo system. So again, if he played in the CHL, no chance that Carolina gets him. And then, as you mentioned, Bausov, this is a player, Jerome, that we watched a ton of. We ended up watching a lot of Roman Bausov, having a lot of discussions about him. And your player comp is easily the best comp I've ever heard of or seen for this player. So maybe elaborate on that comp and break them down.
Igor Zemulov is my comp for Bausov, a very tall, lanky, very long-term potential with him. But the more we watch, the reason we watch him quite a ton is we watched Prokhorov, who was his teammate with Dynamo St. Petersburg. So, they had those two, big kid on the team, and Bausov was really interesting. Right D, who can move puck. He's smart. So he's a really interesting pick for the Hurricanes. And it's funny enough, Limatov and Ryabkin were teammates in Dynamo Moscow at the start of the year before Ryabkin left. But so interesting. Limatov, I mean, a few years ago, like the Hurricanes took like in the third round, a defenseman named Alexander Nikishin out of Russia, who was really toolsy, really raw, and things turn out really, really, really well for them. I'm not saying Limitov will end up being that, but I was really surprised he fell all the way to the third round. I could see someone not agreeing with us as a Limitov as a A rated prospect, but falling all the way to 67, like that was a big shocker to me. There's a lot of
especially in
bad
this
players.
draft. Though.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Like it's
bad
not a
players that
deep
were
draft. So.
there was a lot of bad players picked before him that I'm like, yeah, come on. So as you said, if he was maybe in the OHL with London, or like a bigger a big time junior club, like I don't think he goes that far in the draft. So yeah, I like their draft. Ryabkin is uh, in the American Hockey League right now. He's doing. I saw some. He's crazy. Like let's be honest here. Like he is crazy. Like I saw him like start some stuff in the American Hockey League, and I'm like, man, this kid is he's either crazy or he has no idea what's going on, because like he had like American Hockey League players trying, like they were taking a run at him. I think he got suspended. So and he might have also got hurt at some point. But anyway, like I don't know. I thought he might play in the queue this season. Looks like he has no intention to play in the queue. I don't know. Like I have never been a huge fan of like 18 years old playing in American Hockey League. So we'll see how this one goes. He's a big thing last year was like he was out of shape. So I don't know if that turned around this season. But if you want to play for Rob Brandamore one day, you better be in shape, because he's not gonna deal with that. So last year that was a big reason why he struggled so much. How bad his pace was, his skating was bad. A lot of it, I think, might be caused by him being out of shape. So we'll see. We'll see about him, but at that like 60 second overall, like I, you know, I think it's a good pick by the Hurricanes. It's a good value pick at that point. Later in the draft, like they went with two smaller winger that have um, upside offensively, but it doesn't mean it's gonna like work out for the NHL. But in the 6th, 7th round, I'm okay with that. You take a flyer on some kids who have like legit talent, and maybe in 3-4 years it turns out pretty well for you, and those guys are in the NHL. But 6th, 7th round, this is where you can take some flyer on some kids who have drawbacks to their game, but they have actual talent. So yeah, that's a bit my take on the Hurricanes. Very similar. They usually do the same thing every year, Brad. They draft some Russian that drops in the draft. They will trade down also every year. They will trade down in the draft. So every year it's pretty much the same for the Hurricanes.
And they take smaller forwards that drop because of their size. So they did literally everything that Carolina does. It's not hidden. It's right in front of us, and they do it every year. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that will be it for the Hurricanes. Let's move on to our next team, Brad, which will be the Columbus Blue Jackets. Let's take a look at what they did this past June. Obviously, Jackson Smith, Pietro Andrianov. We did talk a bit about those players in a recent video we did talking about not the Hurricanes, the Blue Jackets top 10 prospect. So we're gonna maybe go a bit quickly on those two. But overall, what did you think of third draft? Malte Vass was an interesting pick by them in the third round. he was an interesting pick because of what they said after the draft, mentioning that he was, a first round talent for them, basically. So interesting. It's like people get mad about this sometime, but every team has their own philosophy on how to run their draft, and clearly, like the Columbus have a different philosophy. They value those physical, stay-at-home defensemen. They took Charlie Elick last year pretty high, who was in a similar profile of a player as Vass. So to me, that's they had an interesting draft. Obviously, we love the pick of Andrianov, who was he was actually our number 2 ranked goalie, but he was our favorite goalie in the draft. Really, I was quite surprised they went with Andrianov. I was thinking Ravensburger would be the first goalie off the board, just because teams probably had more viewings of him, being in North America, being a 6'3", 6'4" goalie. But I was pleasantly surprised by the Blue Jackets going with Andrianov, and obviously Jackson Smith. He's now at Penn State, very toolsy defenseman. 6'3", skates like the wind. Offensively, it was good all year, but if you really finished strong, the last, I would say, last 20 game of the season, he was on fire in the WHL. But he still end up dropping a bit in the draft. I think we thought maybe he would go slightly a bit higher in the draft, but I don't think the Blue Jackets will complain about him dropping to 14. I'll give you the time here, Brad. What was your initial take on the Blue Jackets and with that draft class here?
Well, it's very rare that you can say in a draft that a team managed to get positional need and BPA with the respective slots. I thought they did both in their first 2 picks. Like, I really thought Jackson Smith was the best player available at 14, and they absolutely needed a toolsy defenseman in their system. Svozil is looking a little static right now in terms of being able to actually generate offense at the pro level at the rate that they're looking for. They got Matejchuk up full time, so he's no longer a prospect. They needed something to come in here that could do everything, really. And that's what Jackson Smith can do if things go right. Like, very toolsy, as you mentioned. Just some decision-making issues. That's why he fell, for sure. The mental glitches. Like, he can be a one-man show too often. It's one of those situations where if he was if he could think the game like Matejchuk, he ain't going to 14. Let's forget about that. He'd be top 3-4 all day. So he just has to clean up some parts of his game, and I think he's good to go. Andrianov, I know publicly, like I've said this before, I'll say it again here, like, people thought it was a bad pick, and why not move back to take him? Well, the simple reality was he's arguably the best goalie available in the draft. Almost everybody expected Ravensburger to go in the first round, so why take the chance and not take Andrianov where they did? Like, I wouldn't have taken the chance considering what was behind them in the draft there. They all needed goalies. Philly was behind them. Philly needed a goalie desperately. San Jose was there, ended up taking Ravensburger. Yeah, well, I thought it was BPA.
Yeah, they took him 20, and if they're like, well, I'm going to take him later in the draft, well, they're not getting him at 76.
No chance. Yeah, no, they'd have to stay in the first round. They could only move back a couple spots, and I wouldn't even taken that chance. It's just because if they're going to draft at that position, you got 3 options there: it's Ravensburger, Andrianov, or Frolov. And I totally understand why they would go with Andrianov. If that's their player, if that's their guy, go with it. Yeah. Like, why? Yeah. I'm not taking that risk. So Multivass. I mean, so this player, he's 6'1", but if you watch him on the ice, he looks bigger in his size. Really athletically gifted, broad looking on the ice, excellent skater, like all over the map though, like consistency wise. When he was playing for Farjestad J20, he was incredibly inconsistent with his retrieval rates, his exit playmaking, his ability to be impactful. I thought it was wildly inconsistent. You look at him as a pro in the SHL and Champions League, where he's playing against men. And I know for some of you that actually scout Europe hockey that are hearing this, I know Champions Hockey League, it's kind of considered a joke when it gets up and running. Like, players don't really take it too seriously and stuff. But that said, you can still kind of get a better idea, I think, of some prospects because you do see them better structure, and that's what happened with Voss. So what I thought was when Malte Voss was basically forced to play with extra structure, he looked more like a real pro player. Reminds me a lot of Willender out of Detroit, Jerome, from that perspective. I liked him a lot more in Allsvenskan than I did when he was playing junior in his draft season.
I mean, it's a classic case of Sweden. Like, I feel like every player we scout in Sweden,
it is
that we see them in the pro. Like, we have a better like safety net, I guess, or a better understanding of what they could become if we only see them in junior in G20, where there's no structure. And it's really it's a lot more difficult for scout to really try to project their potential only watching them in G20, because it's not great hockey, and there's no structure in the games like we saw. So anytime we can see a guy play SHL or Allsvenskan, it's a big bonus for us, and it makes our job a lot easier, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's just too much time and space in J20. There's just so much open ice, so it's and everybody's just transition. I remember like Adam Wilsby, like Nashville's top 4D now that's coming. He was playing the Allsvenskan when he got drafted, but I remember in J20. Like he was just activating 24/7. He was always the fourth forward. I didn't even know what his defense was. I had no idea. I had to wait. Everybody else did too. That's why he was drafted later instead of coming out of J20. Owen Griffin. Speaking of structure, this is a structured player. This is one of those, we've said it several times here, but it really does apply to this kid, which is that he's a great player. He's more than the sum of his parts, but he quote unquote does look like a great junior. So it's like he's just missing that physical specialized element that can get him over the top in terms of skating, in terms of size, in terms of talent level. Even like he's not untalented. He has a very good catch and release, but how he sets his offense, he loves to do a lot of manipulative behind the back playmaking. And he loves to try to manipulate triangles with his handling. But the way he does it right now at his size, like he's going to have to augment a whole lot of this. Almost reminds me a little bit of Mackie Samaskovich in the sense that, like, I'm not saying they're the same player or the same talent level. I liked Mackie a lot in his draft season. But what I'm saying is, like, when Mackie got to college, like he was doing so many 2-touch extended lateral drags through player bases and going across the grain in open ice. Like every second handling play was that. And Griffin does that with his augmented reverse playmaking. And that's not going to fly, right? It's going to have to get cleaned up. And much like Mackie, he had to clean up that lateral 2-touch lateral dragging, and he did. Griffin here is going to have to do the same thing to look more like a player. But he's the distinguishing quality of him is he does not play afraid. Plays net front, plays down low. He'll be gritty. He'll be determined. And again, he does have the ability to score in soft ice areas because of his catch and release in tight. And he's not a dumb hockey player by any stretch. So outside chance looking in as a 5th rounder there, but an interesting selection. I can't remember draft time for the life of me. Maybe we should comment on the BCHL kid, Jerome, but you saw him more than me. So what do you think of him?
Before I briefly touch on him, I'll just add on Griffin. Like, he had a really great second half of the season. Like, one of the top scorers in the OHL in the second half of the season. His problem is he's undersized and he's not really a good skater. So that's the big, if he was a smaller guy but really fast, like a really good skater, like I think he's gone in maybe the top 3 round. Now the skating size combo probably hurt him, and then that's why he dropped to the 5th round. But if he can improve on that, maybe one day he does reach the NHL, because he has some talent. He also has some really high end compete. There's no quit with this player, so that's a nice combo to have. But there's not many player in the NHL who are 5'9" and average skater. So that's the big hurdle for Griffin. And Jérémy Loranger is a kid from Quebec who played in the BCHL last season. Had a great season. He has some talent, but he's also pretty undersized as well. I remember, I think I watched him in his QMJHL draft year, and he was about 5'6". He has grown a bit since that. Like I think he's
Yeah, so
about
what's he now?
5'9".
5'9.5"?
Yeah,
Like that.
5'9". Yeah, so I think he's going to be a great college player. And we'll see about the NHL after that. But I think that's a 3-4 year player in college, and then after that, we'll see about the NHL. But like I mentioned before, like it's not a bad pick in the 7th round. Pick a guy who has some skill. Obviously, there's a reason why he's there in the 7th round, but maybe you can, work a bit on his the drawbacks that he has. He's not a bit like Griffin. He's not the best skater, so at his size, that's a bit of the issue why he did drop in the at the draft. Interesting about him is that in a queue with the new CHL NCAA agreement, he could have come back to the queue. He's actually was drafted by his hometown team, and he never went back. So interesting. He could have played with Shawinigan last year, and they could have really used him. They had a good team, but with him in the lineup, they probably could have make a serious run at the Q championship. So anyway, so long-term project with Loranger in the 7th round, but not again good value pick if everything works out. So that will do it for Columbus. Let's move on to our next team, Brad, and we'll go with then let's say the New Jersey Devils will be the next team. So the Devils didn't have a first-round pick. So their first pick was Conrad Fondrick, 50 overall. Ben Cavan, also one of the last pick of the 2nd round. If I look at the list here, probably the guy that was really interesting to me, and the guy who we had pretty high was Gustav Ilstrom in the 4th round. So maybe we can start talking about him, and then we'll keep going. But Brad, that's a guy we had time for. A guy from Sweden, playing the junior league in Sweden, had a good year with Brynäs. Good size center. We think he has potential to be probably a 3rd-line center down the road. We were maybe on our own island over this player because we had him way higher than 114. I believe we had him around 40, 45 on our final list. So we had time for this player, and honestly, we were really surprised that he fell down that late in the draft. So maybe you can start with Ilstrom, and then we'll say a few words about the other prospect here.
Well, yeah, to your point, I mean, like we just talked about how some of the kids in the last prospect pool are look like good junior players. I mean, this player plays a pro game. Like he's got that maturity you're looking for. He's got structure. He always stays above the puck. He's defensively responsible. He's a forechecking nightmare. He can really skate. He has size. He's physical. He wins draws. The huge thing here, I think the fall has to do more with the talent level. He is a primary playmaker. He's a secondary shooter, and he is not a very gifted shooter. That said, he can still get in that front. He can still make things happen with his toolkit and get himself into soft ice in high danger areas. So he's never going to be the highest end goal scorer, but he can one-touch process plays. His handling is pretty good, and he can set up his teammates. So I was surprised, Jerome. Like you look at him at full speed coming down a wing and laterally like setting up his teammates. He certainly looks like he can hold in the NHL one day based off of the playmaking. So I thought it was phenomenal value, one of the best picks in the draft. I'm sure you agree with that. Trenton Bennett, I can comment on a little bit. I watched him when he was in the CCHL, not as much in the OHL. Massive goalie, technically pretty advanced in some areas, especially with post integration, but not the huge thing for me was like last season, I had to adapt again. The irony, I had to readapt from something I used to state back in the day, which is I thought the small goalie wouldn't die, and it would. Admittedly, I thought it wouldn't die, but I also didn't think it would come back and thrive. And now we're seeing a huge curve and swing in the opposite direction, where it looks like most teams starting to recognize that like optimal size and positioning size of the position is maybe around 6'1", 6'2" again. So with the problem with Trenton Bennett is like everything comes down to the skating base, because when you're that big, it's just way easier for teams to exploit you from an offensive perspective. If you can't skate the game. And again, if you're that big, it's very hard to skate the game at an adequate level that's meant for the NHL. So that's long-term, that will be everything to his development. Can he pull, what's the Swedish kid from Leksands that we had ranked pretty high there, Jerome, in 2014?
2014.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That's 11 years ago, my friend.
Yeah, I know. This is what happens when we stay up and watch a 7-hour baseball game. I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name. Either way, the Swedish goalie who the Islanders drafted, and they got him way too late. And basically his trajectory took off once he got the SHL. The skating's come up miles. He's not in his RVH nearly the degree he used to be in when he was in J20. And he's really looking like one of the top 3 goalies out of that class. And Bennett, that's the hope, is he can follow suit with that type of trajectory. Mason Moe, we watched a lot of the USHL for Madison because of Riker Lee. Riker Lee was like a fan favorite of ours. We loved him. We were huge fans of Riker Lee. We thought he was super underrated. And Mason Moe, he was part of that cog that really helped give Riker Lee time and space. He's a natural sniping center. He's not the most gifted playmaker, not a very creative player, but he plays a streamlined, hard-nosed approach. He has good shot quality. He can be a gritty, determined, down-low presence. It's all, and he's not a bad athlete either. Like, he's not small, and he skates relatively well. I wish he was a bit more dynamic, Jerome, I would say, in that regard. Like, if he could skate like Gustav Hillstrom and have Hillstrom's size, I would feel probably even more comfortable with him. But he's a bit under from that perspective. And that gets us to Ben Kavan, who admittedly I did not have much time for this player, but I get it from a perspective of the talent. And what Mason Moe lacks in creativity, Kavan has it in spades, or Keevan. I think hopefully I'm actually pronouncing his name right. Ben Keevan. So it's one of those situations where talent-wise he has it, but in terms of how to optimize his offense correctly within his windows, he doesn't know how to do any of that yet, because he is in that experimental phase. He reminds me a little bit of Nils Hoglander, Jerome, in that way. Like Hoglander, super creative, super nifty set of hands, like remarkable set of hands, made a ton happen with them, but he really didn't know how to streamline or optimize his game until much further down into his career here with Vancouver. I feel like Ben Keevan is in a similar situation where it's going to take him a lot of time. But admittedly, I liked Hoglander way more at the same age. It wasn't even debatable to me. So for myself personally, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. But New Jersey, we needed to get some talent infused, and he is absolutely a talent. And that brings us to Connor Fondrick. So Fondrick's interesting because our scout, Chris, he had a lot of time for this player and is -1. The most talented player on the program, you could make an argument for. And he grew. He's a bigger player. One thing I noticed before he got to the USHL was almost all of his production was in transition. What's fascinating about that is this player is not that gifted a skater. And so what the thing that I was looking for, what would happen in terms of his adaptability when he gets to the USHL and then more defense can actually keep up with him and he can't get those odd man chances or the breakaways like he used to be able to? What would happen then? And it turned out that some of his play would die. Right? It turned out very inconsistent in terms of being able to actually generate the same level of offense. He is still very intriguing though. From the sense that this player can really handle a puck. He is soft skill for days. He can really shoot from a technical perspective. One of the best wheelhouses in this draft, like incredibly dangerous on the flank on a power play. And he's not a dumb player by any stretch. He can think the game. He can pass a puck. So like you look at the raw base, it's all there. He needs to get way more powerful. The three areas, and I have not watched him in college this season, minus a couple of his passing rates. I've watched like 40 or 50 of his passes, but I've never actually watched a full game of him and see how his skating's looked. So I was just looking to see if the playmaking would hold, because it would theoretically counteract some of the limitations with him in open ice when it doesn't have the same peak power output as some of these other kids. And that did hold in my sample. Like his playmaking actually looks pretty darn impressive. It's clean, it's accurate, it's not forced. So that's going to go a long way if his skating doesn't come another year or two. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. But I had some debates, even when on my show on the NHL Network about like, some people looked at this class and was like, okay, Fondrick, it's like that's a high floor, low ceiling. And then you take the really high ceiling, low floor. And then Mason Moe is like a high floor type of player with a limited ceiling. Like the way I looked at it was I thought they swung for the fences with Fondrick at 50. Like that's their dark horse swing player where if things go right, he could be a top 9 forward who scores 20, 25 goals a year for you. And then and they immediately followed up with another talent. Then they take Moe and Hillstrom, who kind of tries to solidify the floor. So they kind of reverse engineer their class where they took their swings and then tried to solidify on the back half there with their centers.
Yeah, Fondrick was a tough one to scout last year. He didn't have much success with the program. The program was a disaster last year. So he, if he ends up being a pretty good player, we can say like the program really was a big reason why, because we didn't really have him ranked that high. And we had some discussion about him, and maybe we should have listened to Chris a bit more on that one. We'll see. He's off to a decent start in college. He's at Boston U with 4 points in 6 games. So we'll see. I just felt like no one really improved with the program last year. And also he had some injuries during the season, but his production was just not good. And a lot of games he was a bit too passive also. And me personally, I really struggle with guys that are passive. It's just like, why would I draft someone who's a passive hockey player? Just like it doesn't, unless you're really a high-end talent, and the talent was not there, and he didn't really compete hard enough for me. Ben Kevin was an interesting one in his -1 draft year, where he really had a good season in the USHL. Didn't have a bad season last year, just didn't improve. And he was in a similar, I think he was a similar player to Lucas Romano, who was in Kitchener. Both guys who does have talent, and you would think, we would have ranked them, higher. We just never got him on board with those two players. So we'll see about him. He's at Arizona State this season. So great, fantastic place to play college hockey, to be honest. And then, just I'll finish with Hillstrom. It's funny, like he was their 5th pick. He was our highest ranked player on the whole, draft class here. So it's always interesting to see the difference between our rankings and NHL rankings. Sometimes it's really, really similar, and sometimes it's completely different. So you can put New Jersey as a very different ranking than ours. So that will be it for New Jersey, Brad. We'll move on to our next team, but will be really interesting to look back at this draft class in a few years to see where Fondrick, looks. Where's Kevin in his development? Where's Hillstrom in his development? Mason Moe, that you mentioned, like he was playing with Riker Lee. Like, was Riker Lee a big reason why Mason Moe went in the 3rd round? Like we didn't have Mason Moe rank, I believe. So it's going to be really interesting to look at that draft class in 3-4 years. So we'll see. Like they have, I believe their top 3 picks are in college this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what that draft class looks like. So let's move on to a team who had a ton of draft pick, including the number 1 overall pick in the class in Matthew Schaefer. So let's talk about the New York Islanders, Brad. Well, they had a lot of picks and a lot of interesting ones. So let's start with Matthew Schaefer, I guess, who is doing really good at the NHL level right now. He was a clear-cut number 1 ranked guy for us last year. You know, basically we had him ranked number 1 before anyone else. And it was not even close for us. He was our number 1 guy.
It wasn't basically, Jerome. We did. I mean, listen, we get some things wrong, everybody, but if you don't know who we are, we absolutely did have Matthew Schaefer 1 ranked before any other public outing. We really did.
No,
and we moved James Higgins outside the top 5 before anybody publicly too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, some people didn't even have Schaefer in their top 3 by the end of November. So
sums up a lot.
Yeah,
sums up a whole lot.
Well, one thing we didn't predict was Matthew Schaefer being that good at the NHL level.
No, that's true. We didn't predict this part.
Yeah, so he's a freak. I mean, he only played 17 OHL game last year, and to do what he's doing at the NHL level is like insane to me. He's not just doing well for rookie; like he's doing well for an actual high-end NHLer. So we'll see if he can keep up. But man, it's been really fun to watch him play so far this season. We can talk about him, but like he was a clear-cut number 1 guy for us. And he's so young also. Like remember, like he turned 18 like September 5th. So if he was born 11 days later, he's not even draft eligible. That's we can't forget about that. And obviously offensively, like his game offensively with the skating, the skill, the play driving, it's very Kyle McCarr. Like, don't know if he's going to be as good as Kyle McCarr, maybe. So far it's looking pretty good for him and the Islanders, but that's the kind of defenseman he's going to become at the NHL level. And the Islanders really hit like, I mean, my guess it was an easy pick for them to make, but just winning the draft lottery was,
enormous.
I think, game changing. I'll continue, I guess, with Victor Eklund, Keyshawn Aitchison, 2 pick that they got from Montreal in the Dobson trade. Eklund, I mean, I feel like it's impossible to dislike this player. Really high compete, great skating. Guy can provide offense. Him and Anton Frondel are so fun to watch together in Sweden last year and this year. Smart player. Very. He's a bit undersized. He's a bit undersized. So this is a bit probably a reason why he dropped to 16. Kind of remind me when Zach Benson dropped a bit in the draft to Buffalo at 13. Those smaller player, smaller winger, sometime will drop at the draft. So I felt like Eklund was a bit in the same boat as Benson. Aitchison, really interesting defenseman. Really. He's a weird one because I did mention this last year. Like I felt like I've liked him more if he was better at defending. Like take some of his offense away from him and gave him a bit more defense, and I probably would have liked him a bit more because offensively he did some really good things last year. But I still don't know if I really going to think of him as a big point getter at the NHL level. Definitely not a PP1 guy. Anyway, they don't need a PP1 guy. They have Matthew Schaefer for the next 10, 15 years. So I just wish his defense was a bit better. He does bring like an amazing physical element to his game, but I find defensively his reads sometimes were not the best. He's a bit slow to react at time, but and the skating also. The skating it's a bit average for him, and he's just yeah, the physical game is great, but he's also just a 6 feet, 6'1" defenseman. So it's not like he's 6'4", 6'5". So I wonder in the long term if that could result in some injuries for him, because he does play a really violent physical game. He can fight. He can really hit. Like he does have great timing with his open ice hits. He's really dangerous. Like if you're a forward, you have to be really aware of where he is on the ice, because you can get a concussion basically from getting hit by him. Like he's really dangerous. So that's their first 3 pick. Brad, you want to mention anything about those 3 and what they mean to the Islanders' future?
Sure. I mean, one of the most fascinating things to me the last couple of years is like, okay, the 2 best first overall picks have been Schaefer and Celebrini, and they are easily the 2 picks that got the least amount of hype. There was like no hype for Celebrini for some reason, and no hype for Schaefer whatsoever. And I think people mistrusted the sample, right? 17 games in the O. I saw some crazy things written about him publicly, everything you could think of in terms of like, oh, he's not that gifted, or like there's no chance that that he should be number 1 because of the sample compared to like Misa, etc. It's just crazy to me, because we knew very early. It's the reason we had him 1 so high so early, and we had Kel McCarr ranked incredibly aggressively before most people as well, right? So, and don't get me wrong, we get things wrong too. Like we had Quinn Hughes way too late.
I mean, we had McCarr 4, but we did add Nolan. Is it not Nolan Schaefer?
Nolan Patrick.
Nolan Patrick second. So it's like, yeah, we can take credit from McCarr, but the Nolan Patrick selection didn't really work out for us. So
well, I mean, it didn't work out for anyone, because I mean, he had migraine issues for his entire pro career, really. But your point stands that even if he did get to play, there's no chance he would be what McCarr is. So that said, Schaefer, like the big thing here is like Islanders fans, what's the ceiling, right? Like what is he actually? It's looking more and more like he's at least a 90 to 100 point player. Like it really is. So that's really good. That's you're doing okay from that front. That said, I'm still a bit worried about him this season. Like he's not physically ready for the NHL. And he's already been injured. He's already lost time. If I would probably send him back personally, but I'm always a believer that you just, like, I get it's all politics. You got your first overall pick. You want to show shiny new toy syndrome, and you show the fan base that there's hope in the future and everything, but you got to be very careful. Like, you can't mess it up. And if Schaefer gets a dislocated shoulder and it doesn't heal properly, right? Yeah. That's the situation he's in. He's getting targeted. They're targeting him. They're doing a great job protecting him too. Like they're coming right after teams that are going at him, when I
saw Patrick Waugh, I was like, I wonder if he's gonna, after the 9 games, he might go back. And then I see he's playing 25 minutes a night. I'm like,
there's no chance. There's no chance he's going back. No. That's why I brought it up, because there's Patrick Waugh would fight me right now if he could. There's no chance he's going back. So the huge thing here with the Eklund and Atchison move up for them, like I love how they did it, right? So Eklund guaranteed a player. There's very few guarantees in hockey, as all of you know, but Eklund, there's a basically 0% chance he's not a top 9 forward in some capacity. And that's huge because he lost option for it. You got to get something that's for sure going to play. And then you take the swing, right? And that's what Atchison is. Atchison is like the wild card of this draft. On one hand, he's a unicorn. You cannot find defensemen that have his shot quality and are willing to drop the mitts, right? Like that's a really rare combination. They already have their power play one, as you mentioned, Jerome. So it's like he does not need to be forced into a position he's not going to be able to handle long term. But admittedly, like the big thing with this player, I just feel like if you take away his shot, like if you take away his wrist shot mechanics specifically, and you take away his physicality, the rest of his game is not instinctual. I mean, it's going to take time. Like he's very, very raw. I always joked with people who wanted me to talk about this player in last year's class. I feel like he's a converted power forward. That's what he feels like when he's on the ice sometimes. It's going to take a long time. That said, if he hits, total unicorn value. And that segues me directly into Daniil Prokhorov. So they went back-to-back on the unicorn front. So Daniil Prokhorov, like Atchison, total one-off style of player, incredibly raw, tremendous potential. So on the one hand, 6'6", ridiculous skating power, very athletically gifted. His handling rates all over the map, but when they're going and working for him, you can see the upside long-term, much of the way you kind of can with Letourneau when Letourneau's operating right. And this kid, the thing about this player, he's a menace. Like this kid doesn't care. He will just battle 3 or 4 players simultaneously. He doesn't care about double team coverage. He doesn't care about anybody really. And that's why we nicknamed him 1v9, because he doesn't care about his own team. He doesn't care about the opposing team. He's out there taking names. So it's one of those situations where he has to learn how to play within a system, which you say about 95% of every Russian player you ever select, but it's really emphasized here. Like this player is in the top system. Dynamo is one of the top systems. And it's one of those situations where he just doesn't have any line mates. He doesn't care about them and doesn't pass a puck. He had the lowest passing rates per 60 for his ice time out of any player we've ever scouted in any league. I mean, that's crazy. It doesn't pass a puck. Now, that said, if you're not going to pass a puck, be 6'6" and be a monstrous presence down low and around the net front, and that's exactly what he is. And then Luca Romano. So Luca Romano's pretty intriguing.
Don't actually, like I say, he didn't pass the puck. Like down low, he did make some decent pass at times.
He can. That's a good point, Jerome. He can technically pass a puck. He just opts not to do it nearly the degree that you want him to do it. He had one of the best passes I saw last season. I still remember the play. He was streaking down a 1-on-1 situation. He tried to cut wide. He couldn't. He spun off the pressure. He hesitated. He waited for his trailing teammate who hit the slot area, and he threaded a backhand pass through 2 sticks, and it went straight to the tape, and the guy missed an open net. His teammate missed an open net. And I still remember that play because it's like, oh, you can actually like show some poise. You can find trailing options. You can actually set up some sophisticated technical passes. He can do that. And Jerome's right, especially around the net area specifically. You can have some good low to high setups and some lateral setups that really, really work. It's just the transition game, his transition decision-making, and just raging bull Jake LaMotta seen red 24/7 when he's got the puck. He just wants to go at everybody. Luca Romano,
he's super fun. He's super fun as a prospect.
He's entertaining.
Even off the ice, like as some Islanders saw at their prospect camp, like he's super like entertaining off the ice too. So I don't know what.
It's like Big Boss Voronkov is like that too. Like the Russians got some personality in him, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'll mention one other thing about him too, Jerome. Very underrated defensively, which makes no sense. There's no chance that I thought the player would actually be capable defensively. I thought he'd be cherry picking 24/7, leaving his own way too early, always looking to activate and transition and trying to get ahead of the play when he shouldn't, and never staying above the puck defensively. And it's not true at all. He plays within a system, plays within a structure on the wing defensively, actually has pretty good anticipation and pretty darn good stick instincts. Like that's huge for him, because if you're going to turn, say theoretically that he makes it, but then his execution rates through the neutral zone and he's driving and rushing with the puck, they're going to die down occasionally in the NHL, no question. Well, he can make up lost ground with his defensive play to keep him in the lineup. Like that's one thing he really has going for him still. So that leads to the possibility of him playing that much more. Where if he was like like let's say theoretically he was like Rabkin, like Rabkin in Carolina's system, who can't defend worth anything. Like when Rabkin turns pucks over, you're in trouble because his rate of recovery with his speed, with his skating doesn't matter. It's not going to hold for now, anyways. And he just again, he's a proximity player. So if you don't go near him, he's just passive, right? And Prokhorov does not operate that way. Doesn't operate that way. So that's huge for Prokhorov's development long term. Luca Romano is nothing like Atchison or Prokhorov. We've seen this player many, many times. This is a very, very good junior sniper who's pretty well rounded, skates pretty darn good. The problem with this player is he can be he does compete, and he did improve his level, his effort level as the season progressed, I felt, especially his wall play. Like he was much better at board battles and staying competitive within those environments. But there's just, for the amount of speed and talent he has, there was so much mental inconsistency last season. Reminded me a little bit of Cooley out of Windsor when Cooley was with Windsor, Jerome. That's where Cooley in his draft year, he looked like a player, but he was like, his mental consistency rates were just all over the map. That's why he fell to the Rangers in that draft. I feel like Romano has a bit of that as well. But I'm not a huge fan, but I think the pick is intriguing. And it's one of those players where if he does play one day, you're like, oh yeah, I mean, he did have the necessary talent, skating ability, sense to do it. So from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I like Politan, cookie cutter, net front, like pretty heady player. Like just play more of like a net front player to me. I don't know if there's that much more there, Jerome. Is there anything specifically you remember attribute-wise that you would say stood out to you about him?
Well, he's always a hard worker, like a very like he was also the captain of the Czech team at like all the tournaments. He was a player that was like I wish he was faster, a bit more talented, because he played the right way, the right way that could make him like a very dependable, depth player at the NHL level. As you mentioned, very good around the net. A guy can also kill penalty, like some good things to like, but I just felt like the lack of skating, the lack of skills too, was probably going to keep him out of the NHL unless he improves. He's in the WHL this season with Kelowna, so let's see how he does there. He also has a younger brother, by the way, that is draft eligible this season. He's a goalie, so we're gonna keep an eye on him. So yeah, Politan's like, that's a guy I wanted to like, but I just couldn't do it because of the skating and the skill that was just a bit too average for me, for him. So do you want to talk about Burke Hood, Brad?
Definitely, yeah. And I can remember my memory, it's not working too well today. I'm sorry, everybody. That Jays game is taking a lot out of me. But I do remember who I was trying to talk about earlier, Jerome, when making a mention towards the New Jersey goalie pick there. It's Marcus Gidloff, who the Islanders selected, who is looking exceptional and looks like a home run for them right now. And that leads to Burke Hood, who I thought was phenomenal.
You said, when you mentioned it, you said 2014 draft. So that's 2020.
I meant 2024. So yeah, this is listen. I tried to get this done yesterday, everybody. I felt great yesterday. I was ready to go. We couldn't get it done, and now I got an anchor in my head. So 2024 is what I meant. Marcus Gidloff was the pick. Gidloff right now is top 3 to redraft unquestionably. Could not believe he fell to the 19th goalie selected in that draft. Well done. The Islanders are looking good there. Burke Hood, we had time for Jerome, like really improved as the season progressed. Really, in the second half, like he out-dueled Ravensburgen multiple times. He looked phenomenal. Even the playoffs where he was lit up occasionally, he held his own. This is a hybrid goalie, and I don't mean like hybrid butterfly. It's ludicrous to call any goalie not a butterfly goalie at the stage of hockey. But I mean hybrid is in. This is a goalie who who thinks the game more from like a positional blocking perspective, but then has the athleticism to back it up, like higher danger chances when necessary. Like his rate of recovery and his lateral agility is way more explosive than you would like typically expect, because he can remain somewhat contained and compact in his net. I don't love his set stance. He's still like, I get it, because okay, he remains coiled inward. Like everything is inverted towards his center line. And the reason that I think he does that is twofold. One, it allows him access to his edge work for C-cut skating when necessary at a higher rate. The other factor is it allows him to be more explosive with his extensions when he has to use his blocker glove or kick out suddenly. So like there's benefits to that, but it really does make him look narrow, and it makes him look smaller than he is. Like he is a 6'4" kid who's pretty broad, but you see him in the net and he's kind of coiled inward. So I'm hoping over time they can balance that a bit better, make him a bit more presentable in a set stance where he's broader and wider like he actually is in real life. He's had a difficult start to the season. Now, Vancouver has not helped him in any capacity. Their defense, my goodness, the defense I was watching, to say they had some systems issues is a severe understatement. So he was left out to dry in several of his performances to start. And he finally started looking like he was putting it together against Medicine Hat there recently. But then he had another pretty darn poor performance the next game there. So mentally, nowhere near where he was in the second half last year yet, but at the 6th round 170, this was our, I believe, 6th or 7th ranked goalie, Jerome. So that's pretty good value. Yeah. If things go right, some sort of hybrid between Laurent Brossoit and Aiden Hill. And again, if that things have to go very right, but it's possible. So that's it. Vasnica, we could maybe touch on. Jerome, I'm trying to remember Chris's perspective on Vasnica. I can't remember what he thought of him.
We'll just pass on that one because I don't really remember. So we
have no memory today. So
yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next team, the other New York team, New York Rangers, who did not have a first round pick in this past June, but they did pretty well with their first pick in the second round with as I'm sharing the screen here, with Malcolm Spence as their first pick in the second round. So Brad, and also Sean Barnhill in the third round was a really nice value pick, a guy we had ranked in the 40s. So let's start maybe with Malcolm Spence, who honestly, I was very surprised he fell all the way to 43. That was it was a shocker for me that he dropped that far. Like I had some issue with that player during the year, but I still didn't think he was gonna drop out of the first round. He's right now at Michigan University, so so he took advantage of the CHL NCAA ruling. I think Spence will become like a really dependable two-way forward. I think his talent will probably, keep him more as a third line, middle six player. Like I think the skill level is there's some limitation there with him. But I think the third line, middle six projection is a pretty good one. He's really good defensively. That was my one of my take on him last season, even the year before that. I really like his work defensively, so I think he's gonna be, really good. He's gonna have really good defensive value at the NHL level. Really good on the PK too. So I like that pick by the Rangers. I was surprised that he fell down in the draft, but give him a few years in college, and then I think he might be able to maybe challenge for a roster spot after maybe 2 years at Michigan. It actually reminds me a bit. You mentioned his name, Will Cooley, dropping in the draft. OHLer for different reason why he dropped, and then 3 years later, 4 years later, he's a big piece of the Rangers roster, and
he's their
and
only
actually,
development story.
yeah, I was gonna.
Like he's the only development story they have. It's amazing.
I was gonna say, like, he's one of the few guys that really developed well for them. So as like there has been a bit of a struggle for the Rangers with their young players. Adam Fox just being one, and Will Cooley being maybe the other one. Kako, Lafreniere.
I mean, Fox was developed out of college, though, right? Like, really, like he was there and then got to
I guess.
make his own
I guess.
decision.
I'm trying to be nice here.
Give it to him. Let me tell you, the Rangers fans are going to give you that, Jerome. I'm going to tell you right now. I had there's a diehard Rangers fan I know, and I got this message because they're not playing very well, as you probably know. Without Shesterkin there right now, things are not going. That Trocheck injury has crippled him, and he just goes, "What in the heck is this organization? You know what scouting is? Scouting is astrology for grown men." That was his quote. One of my favorite quotes I've heard in a bit. That was perfect. So that was for I guarantee you he would not give you the Adam Fox. We'll give them Shesterkin, Cooley,
okay.
And how about Chris Kreider? We'll give them those developmentally, and that's about it. One thing I want to ask you, Jerome, about that pick, though, the Spence. Why do you think he fell? Because I'm with you. I thought I was really surprised. 43. Come on, that's pretty. That's huge.
I don't know. Like he hasn't. Like you can argue maybe the upside is not the highest. He's also one of the older player in the draft, so maybe teams think upside wise, yeah, he might be. But like I felt like his play away from the puck was really, really strong. He's a good skater. It's a decent to good skater. Actually, one thing we didn't mention yet, but one thing we saw, you and I, was maybe early in the year, like his stamina, like he was struggling on longer shift. That's one thing we noticed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. Like 25 seconds in his shift, like he was done basically. So that was weird. Like what the heck? Like he looks perfectly in good shape. But yeah, a lot of time we saw like 25 seconds. That was it, like for him in his shift. So
I think too, Jerome, it's interesting. You said he's older, but I feel like there's room to fill out still. Like if you look at his frame and like there's room there. So I found that perplexing too. Like from a curve perspective, it's like, no, he's physically, I think there's another level to him. And then like his compete was all over the map at sometimes. I think it was a result of his conditioning, as you mentioned. I think it was a huge debate. But the third factor, Jerome, one thing I think we can't overlook, I fall in this category. I'm not judging anybody for it. Some teams can't help themselves. They got to draft a unicorn. It's not fun to draft a player you already know. That's Malcolm Spence. I think Malcolm Spence, the byproduct of being a streamlined player and a byproduct of maturing early developmentally as a 16-year-old, is everybody already knew what he was. The Islanders drafted Prokhorov right in front of him. Guess what? Nobody knows, and that's exciting. And admittedly, like I think from a scouting perspective, that can get us sometimes. I think sometimes we fall in love with especially me, this goes for me, you fall in love with that specialized unknown unicorn, and you just want to see his development. It's more interesting to watch, but Spence might be the better pick because Spence, yeah, he's streamlined. Yes, he's more mature and developed in his game, but you know what you're going to get? It's a pretty darn good player. So 43 was unbelievably late.
Yeah. I mean, he played 3 full OHL year, and you could say maybe did he progress enough? Like you look at his first year, 42
statistically
points.
For sure.
Yeah, 62 in his second year and only 73 in his third year. So like, maybe that's some of the reason why team thought maybe the upside is more. There's more limitation that even me, I believe. Like I still think he's probably a third line player, middle six, but maybe some team just didn't think the upside was worth taking a first round pick or even a second round pick on him. So always interesting to see how teams are thinking. Let's move on some guys. Sean Barnhill was a guy that actually Chris, our USHL scout, did bring to our attention that by the end of the year, big 6'5" right D. We had him ranked in the 40s. So going 70 makes a bit sense for the Rangers. My guess they had him in the same range as us. Artem Gonchar, Russian D that we actually had rank. Really good skater. He's playing in Sudbury this year in the OHL. So really guy, a really guy who can skate and have some skills as well. But he's far from a guarantee for the NHL. Mikael Eriksson was one probably the youngest player in the whole class, but I remember during maybe the first half of the season, we just didn't have time for him. He was really struggling for us. He got better a bit in the second half, but again, similar to Gonchar, far from a guarantee for the NHL. Zeb Lindgren was actually a guy we had we had rank him, I think, in our top 55, top 60. But we had time for that player. Maybe Brad, you want to, say a few words about him and the other picks. But yeah, I remember Lindgren was a guy we had time for, and kind of like surprised he went that late in the draft.
Absolutely. I thought he was right there with Multivass. I really did. And he went way later, and I had nobody talking about him, but he's a 6'2", athletically gifted D who can lay out a hit. He can move pucks. I thought he looked comfortable in the SHL. Can skate the game. And does he have offense? No. Does it matter? No. He's not drafted for it. He's drafted to be a specialized shutdown presence. And he has that. So, I'll say this about the Rangers class. I think it's one of the more promising classes they've had in a bit, like relative to where they picked. Like, admittedly, like Gonchar, I was a fan. Raw, difficult to see the projection for the NHL, but like talented. And we talked about how Spence didn't have a lot of runway left in some regards, and being older, Gonchar has a ton of runway. Like Gonchar's just getting the party started. So we'll see if he can take off and become this hybrid puck mover for them long term, smaller hybrid puck mover for them. But he can really skate, as you mentioned. The Sean Barnhill pick was one of my favorites in the draft. I thought it was a phenomenal pick. I love Sean Barnhill. I think there's a tremendous amount of shutdown potential. This player, like, just eats ice. Like, basically what they lost in K-Andre Miller, Barnhill will make up some of that from the defensive perspective, not the offensive perspective, but the defensive perspective for sure. That's it, though. Like, offensively, he can do some plays you would not expect. He can activate as the F4. He can dish a puck. He can find lateral setup options in transition under pressure. He can activate. He's not going to be a dynamic offensive force. He's not going to be a player who plays on a power play or walks the line regularly. He's not going to be one that's a player who can time his pinches and become anything like K-Andre from that perspective. But he can still create secondary offense and activation plays, and in the shutdown ability, the wingspan, the ability to eat ice, the toolkit, all that's there. Like, it's there in spades. He can make some really, really sophisticated plays too, come out of the zone. So love the pick. I thought the Barnhill pick was great. I thought Spence, they got very good value. Gonchar, very interesting wild card pick. Same with Eriksson. And I thought Zeb Lindgren was I thought Zeb Lindgren was one of the best fifth round picks in the draft. So, they've had some difficulty recent years with scouting and especially development. But I think that this draft shows that they're going in the right direction a little bit.
Yeah, remains to be seen. It's one thing to draft them, but there's a lot of work to do after.
Another thing to develop. It's not untrue.
So that will be the big question for the Rangers. How much they're able to help their prospect continue to get better, because the key is to get better every year, and that's been a bit of an issue with them in I would say the past 10 years with their prospect. All right, let's move on to our next team. Let's go with the Flyers, who had a lot of picks.
Tons of picks.
So let's go with the Flyers here. All right. Porter Martone at number 6 made a ton of sense. He's off to a really great start at Michigan State. Great place for him to continue play. Like, I think he was pretty much done with the OHL the way he played last year. Didn't that was a bit of one of my problem with him. The compete level sometimes was just very up and down with him, and I felt like he was getting a bit bored by the OHL. So I didn't really expect him to come back to the OHL. So going to college for 1 year, a fantastic spot for him. Michigan State, great program. They're doing some great things over there. I believe they're the number one team in the country. So great spot for him. Jack Nesbitt was a really, I think for us, a very surprising pick at 12. We're going to talk about him here, but we had him outside of our top 32. And a big reason why was the skating was an issue for us. But then, he's 6'4", 6'5", so you can't be that harsh on the skating, but we also we're not too crazy about the skill. So, if a center like him had really great talent, but the skating was an issue, I still think we would have ranked him, top 32. But
way higher. We would have ranked him way higher for sure.
But when you have like a skill question mark next to his name, and a skating question mark next to his name, then it becomes a bit of a problem ranking him that high. We could be wrong. We could be dead wrong about him, but from what we saw more of we saw him more as a depth player at the NHL level. Whether it's a third line center, fourth line center, we don't know yet. But we didn't see a top 6 forward, and I feel like if you're drafting someone 12 overall, you're looking at a top 6 forward at least. So that's a bit of my issue with the Nesbitt pick. So let's focus maybe on those two picks first, Brad, with Martone and Nesbitt. I'll let you give your take on those two guys here.
Yeah, the main thing with Martone is that I felt like publicly he was one of the most misinterpreted players. Like what I would see written about him relative to the reality of what I thought he was based off our actual footage was not the same player. Like you saw him live, Jérôme, I know a couple times there. It didn't impress you in those viewings. And like this is a very good player. I like the pick. He was slotted right where I think we had him. Like, it makes a lot of sense. He was older for the class. So there, again, less runway. What's interesting about him, nobody talked about, he is slightly knock-kneed. That's gonna factor in long-term for his skating ability, just like it has with Elias Pettersson. And the other factor is his rate of execution with his open ice handling. Like it was nowhere near the level of a prototypical top 6-7 player. Like these kids are in experimentation mode. He's also, what was his third year in the Jérôme?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's just call a spade a spade. He doesn't care. He doesn't. He's just out there doing his thing. He's just waiting to move on with his career. So yes, there's going to be times where he was way too passive, which Jérôme mentioned there. That was one thing, is everybody talked about how he was this remarkable Kachuk-esque hellhound on the ice, and is just this remarkable competitor, and he take over games. And I don't know what people are watching. That did not happen very often for us whatsoever. It just really didn't. Now, part of that is going through the motions because he's been there, and admittedly, like I think some of these kids get overvalidated because of social media, and then they take their foot off the gas. I'm sure that happened to a degree too. But just to give a contrast to what we saw to what was written, for my money, one of the biggest contrasts out there out of any prospect was with Porter Martone. Like, just with the rate of execution, with the compete factor, with the skating, like everything to us was a bit different. Jack Nesbitt was similar to us, but it's interesting, Jérôme, because Porter Martone, I felt it was like publicly we had a really different opinion relative to what we saw out there. Jack Nesbitt, it was more privately. Like NHL teams love this player. NHL teams, like there are people that think we're crazy for having him outside the top 30. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. Like this is the thing. So like when this kid was 16, he wasn't very good, and then he was way, 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 way better than a lot of people expected this season. And so I think what Philly's bet is that the real version is this player who's just going to keep making these massive jumps, right? 6'4", raw, but has some interesting mechanics. Very intelligent player. And one thing I do like about this player is that he makes his teammates better in multiple ways. So he can pass a puck, but he can also play a very, very intense down low net front game where he's exceptional with his hand-eye coordination and with his determination. He's a rebound redirect type of net front presence, which you can use, but then he can also set up his teammates around the net area and do some things in transition. And I will give credit where credit's due. Like one thing that I know some NHL staff talked about, whether it was like, the handling rates will improve. The skating's going to improve. And if he can handle a puck in open ice or his transitional entries per 60 allow him to be a top 6 player from a neutral zone perspective, it can really open up his game. We did see a bit more of that as the season progressed. Like once he started getting off his center line a bit quicker and once he started getting more comfortable with his hands, we did see him bypass slayers at a higher rate. And we did see him make plays that, quite frankly, I didn't think he'd make. And even his shooting mechanics, like, not a great mechanical player. Like his technical playmaking's not great. Not good at feathering pucks over sticks. Not good at tossing pucks. Just not a great technical gifted passer. And that goes for a shot. Mechanically, it's all over the map. But he did have a couple soft catch and release goals that put me on notice at the end of the year. So my point is there was like a trajectory there where you could make. There were flashes there that suggested maybe there's a lot more under the hood than we expected. But to your point, Jerome, he really does, to me, look like more like a third line center. And do you take a 6'4" third line center that's at 12 in this draft? I mean, it's debatable. We'd probably pass it up, but I'm sure Philly probably thinks there's a bit more there than we do, which is fair enough. And that goes straight to Carter Amico, which is, one of the wild card players of this draft. I mean, he was injured the whole year. Very difficult to get a real read on him. The one thing I'll say is that his finesse when it comes to his playmaking, just his passing skill in general, was not at the level I was hoping for. But he's huge. He skates really well. He's an exceptional athlete. And his hands are softer than expected. That's a pretty darn good raw base at 38 to work with. And let's go to I'll finish Jack Murtagh before passing off and saying it to you. Murtagh, for us, tail two season, like he was phenomenal. When he's scoring, he looks like a player. When he isn't scoring, he looks nothing like a player. So his execution rates all over the map. To Jerome's point, the program was a disaster. Like no development happened in any capacity with these kids. Now, Murtagh, one thing I'll give for Philly here is runways longer. He's an August birthday. He's very young for this class, immature player, a very good toolkit. He's pacey. He has a great tank to him, really good energy to him. He has no idea how to use it yet. And that falls back to his spatial awareness, which we thought was downright poor. It was one of the primary reasons that we dropped him in our ranking. However, our area scout, who's a heck of a scout, Chris, disagree with us on this one. So this might be one we come back to or like, because he had a ton of time for Murtagh. I mean, it's a player I thought more highly of at the start of the year relative to where we ended up with him. So what do you think of Murtagh, Amico, and Vincagi?
Well, okay. Martone, I want to add one thing. We'll talk about him playing like a very Ketchuk-like style. To me, in all my viewings, he only played that style at the end of the year in the OHL, in the playoff. Like his playoff kind of save his draft ranking for me a bit, because I was going to rank him much lower because I had enough of watching him being very passive way too many nights. And obviously the skating is also kind of a drawback for him. But the way he played in the OHL playoff against, I believe it was against Oshawa. Yeah, because he went after Seneca like pretty often in that series. Mm-hmm. Like pretty Corey Perry vicious, like slash or typical Corey Perry stuff. So that was good to see, and that kind of like save him for dropping a bit farther on my list. Nesbitt, one thing else we'll talk about the upside. Like last year, he was playing on the top line with Greentree and Protus. Like both guys were elite OHL player. Nesbitt was not like he only had 64 points in 65 games. So you would expect him playing with maybe the two best OHL player last year, that his offensive production would be higher. It was not. Scored one goal in 12 playoff game also. This year, under a point per game still with Windsor. Windsor's not really playing a style that, to be fair, Windsor does not play a style that is very helping their player to produce offensively. They play a really strict defensive style of hockey, so it doesn't really help. But the point remains, the upside of Nesbitt is a big reason why we didn't have him that high, and nothing really has changed for him so far. As you mentioned, Amico missed pretty much the whole season. Very choosy. We'll see about him, but it's going to take some time. He's he missed a full year of hockey basically. So long term, it's going to take some time for that player. Murtagh, I mean, we all start the year being pretty big fan of him, but the more we saw some of the flaws with his game, mostly hockey sense wise. So as you mentioned, when he scores goals, he looks like that's an NHL player right there. But the more you see the little details in his game, you're like, ugh. Like mostly like the playmaking, his hockey sense, all that just gave me less and less confidence that that's going to be a player down the road. Although he's out of the U.S. national team program right now, usually that means players will get better. If I judge by past players in the past few years, usually if they are struggling with the program, they go to a new team. They usually get better. We saw it numerous times over the last few years. So we'll see with him. Maybe in the future, like he's going to be a really good player, and Chris or USA Scout will, will have won the battle over that one. So let's move on to. So Murtagh is at Boston U, so he's in a great college program that usually kids get better by playing there. So we'll see. Vinsagi, 48. We had him as a top 32 prospect. We all love him. We get it. The skating is not the best. We get it. Like he's not a top 6 forward. But what we also get is that he's a violent physical player. And he has, I mentioned he's not a top 6 guy, but he has underrated skill. One thing about him last year with Michigan State, playing in his draft year in college, I just mentioned the program, by the way. Like that was a guy who was a non-factor in his last year with the program. In his -1 draft year. So he's a late birthday, so he plays his draft year in college. Even at Michigan State, obviously, it's a really good team. His ice time was, 12, 13 minutes per game. But he did the most of it. Like, we really like his game. Underrated skill, underrated ends, underrated playmaking. And obviously, what's not underrated is how physical of a player he is on the forecheck. And obviously the playoff value are really good with that player. He's a monster physically. He is, he's your typical Flyers. Maybe not in today's hockey, but like classic Flyers, he does fit like what a typical Flyers. I'm sure if Bobby Clark would watch this player, he would love it. He would love that player so much. So we'll say about him. Matthew Guard, another huge forward out of the WHL. Jay Brad was our WHL scout that was really high on him from the get-go. He said, "Watch this guy. I think he's a second round pick," and he told us this in November. So, and he was a second round pick. Again, upside is a bit limited. But I think that kid can play. He's 6'5". He does move like, if you look at basically him versus Nesbitt, like both are big center / winger. that could end up being depth player at the NHL level. You can say third, fourth line. Guard is probably a better skater than Nesbitt. Physically, I think Nesbitt is probably more advanced, and also Nesbitt will make his teammate better. So that's I would say the big difference between the two of them. But I thought Guard was pretty underrated for the draft. So that was a classic Flyers pick right there. So Brad, do you want to talk about those guys, or you want to maybe focus on Max Westergaard, who was
your favorite,
maybe one of your top sleeper in last year's draft?
Yeah, I'll mention Brit. So Vincegi falling to 48 is crazy. I can't believe in this draft. How? Like, I get it. Like, he's physically already developed. The skating's ugly, but my good, like, he's a player. Like, he still gets around okay. He has all this compete factors off the chart, hits everything that moves, and is way more talented than you think. Like, his hands are there. His shooting mechanics are impressive. He can make passing plays that are super unexpected. Like, it reminds me a little bit of a young Voronkov, Jerome. Not as big as Voronkov, but he reminds me of a young version. And heck, everybody thought if Voronkov played, he'd be a depth player. He's one of the best top-line players in the NHL right now. So you never know. And again, it took him time. Vincegi at 48 for me, one of the better picks in the draft. I really thought that was incredible value. And to your point, 57 on Matthew Guard. If he can be an above replacement fourth line center, it kills penalties for you, shuts down the opposing team as a matchup center. Whew, that's good value. So you got pretty interesting, sizable value picks there, and that brings me to the ultimate value. Max Westergaard. This was a very misinterpreted, misunderstood player. Tale of like the Jekyll and Hyde effect here. So you look at him at J20 and excellent production, but how he produced was interesting. So phenomenal skater, one of the best skaters from a mechanical perspective in the draft, also one of the youngest players in the draft. So expect when the power really comes the following years, he can just completely take off and transition. Now, the thing about him is he's not the most talented player. Like he's not. It's not that he isn't talented, but he's not. He's more like a third line talent level. And that meant in transition, most of his scoring wasn't like high flying, nifty, shooting plays off the rush or handling through multiple layers and then getting in tight and scoring. It was more, I'm the backdoor entry point. I'm going to find soft ice with my skating in advance, get behind the defense that way, and then tap in net front goals. Right, and that it's not as cool looking, but it's just as effective. It's still a goal. What's fascinating to me is how easily that aspect of his game translates long term. That's there for him in spades. What wasn't always there was the off puck play and the rate of consistency you want to see. So what happened was we're kind of in the same boat as most people. It's like, oh, he's an interesting depth piece long term, but he's raw and he was bad internationally, yada yada. But then you see him in the SHL. And I started yelling at Jerome. I was like, Jerome, you got to see this. This is not making this. So we talked about earlier, J20, you got to be very careful. If you can get that SHL sample, you can really see the difference between a player and contrast what they could look like as a pro down the line once you get that little sample between the SHL and J20. So SHL games, his effort level went off the charts. His skating, he could pressurize everything. So he became this forechecking machine. He was excellent on the back check as well. So all of a sudden, this 200-foot player was emerging. And then again, he has enough skill to suggest 30, 35 points a season. Very similar to Michael Sverchik from that perspective, I would say, Jerome. I think Sverchik and him very similar in terms of talent level. But then again, it goes back to that backdoor entry point awareness. Like, this is a player, we just talked about how the spatial awareness of Mertag is missing. Well, it's the opposite with Westergaard. That's Westergaard's strength. So Westergaard can take full advantage of the skating where Mertag can't at this time. And so in the SHL, that's what happened. And one other thing that was very interesting to me about Westergaard was when you watch his offense in the SHL, he started to understand how to adapt his playmaking off the rush at full speed in a way that he wasn't doing in J20. In J20, he would just skate around everybody and try to set up his lateral options. If they hit, they hit. If they didn't, they didn't. in the SHL, he learned how to become more nuanced, and he started incorporating hesitation feints into his playmaking. That led to him getting a lot more high danger passing plays generated per 60, because he wasn't getting a ton of, he was like 14, 15 minutes a night, which is very good for a rookie in the SHL, but not nearly the same degree of minutes he was getting in J20, where he was getting over 20 minutes a game in some nights. So basically, long story short, is that in the SHL, he was unbelievable. And we think that was the real version. So we had him much higher ranked. And the skating alone is a specialized quality. And when you're looking at back halves of drafts, you're looking for unique specialization. Well, this player is a tremendous skater, and he has tremendous spatial awareness, and he does not need to be a driver. He doesn't have to be a driver because he has that backdoor entry point reads, and he has the ability to be that energy plug player who can help complement the line. So there was basically the curve of his season was in exactly the direction needed. It was, without question, the single best 5th round pick in this draft. I will be surprised if he doesn't play in the NHL.
Yeah. Like when he was in junior, he was playing with Ivor Stenberg in the first half of the season, who's going to be possibly a top 10 pick in this year's draft. And Stenberg was, you can make a case he was the best player in junior hockey in Sweden. So they play often together. So you're like, well, a lot of this production came from playing with Stenberg. But Stenberg left in the second half of the season, and the production was still pretty good, right? But really, we got the full picture of what Westergaard is going to be in the SHL. Like, he was so good in the SHL, not just SHL playoff. Yeah, so really interesting guy, and he's like the youngest player in the draft. So, and you look at his skating at that age, and you're like, man, his skating is gonna be like insane. It's already insane, but it's gonna be even more crazy in a few years when he's a bit older, a bit more strong, powerful. So a fun player for the Flyers, and a heck of like an amazing pick in the 5th round for
easily
me.
One of the top 3-4 picks in the back half of the draft, for sure. Probably the top pick, I would say.
Yeah. I'll just finish with Nathan Quinn was their 6th round pick, a kid from the Q. I just watched him a few times this season as I'm watching his team they have a few draft eligible player to watch. So I watched him a bit. He's looking pretty good, but offensively he's a bit, there's some limitation here with him. And that was the case last year too. A bit like Westergaard, he's a bit undersized. He's also very young for the draft, so there's always a bit of maybe a bit more runway here with that player. But very smart, works hard. His details are really good. Like the hockey IQ is really good with that player. It's just like, is there enough here for him to translate that for the NHL to become like a depth player at the NHL level? So long-term potential for that player. It's going to take some time. Like, after he's done with the Q, he's going to, I believe, Northeastern University. So he should be there for a few years. So, I don't think he's going to turn pro before he's 22, 23. But yeah, if he plays in the NHL, it's as a depth, player on your 4th line. Can kill penalties as well. So that's a bit what you're looking for with Nathan Quinn. All right, that's going to wrap up the Flyers draft class. That was a long review.
A lot of big picks. Yeah, they got a whole lot of different player types, though. That draft's huge for them. We'll see. That's a huge one for if they can get Nesbitt to be more in the 3rd line center, and a secondary player like Murtagh, Guard, or Westergaard. If one of the 3 of them hit, and Vinsagi, that's going to be an amazing class for him, because guaranteed Marcone plays.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the other Pennsylvania team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So let me share the screen here. All right, Penguins, lots of draft pick, as you see here. There you go. We can see all the picks now. They have way too many picks. All right. one thing I'll say about the Penguins' first round picks and also the Flyers' first round picks is like Pennsylvania does not care about skating, because the Flyers and the Penguins did not care one bit about their first round picks skating because Kendall, Zonon, Orcroft all have skating issue, um, in their draft year, and the same thing with Martone and Nesbitt for the Flyers. So that's pretty. Okay. When you think about it, it's pretty funny. So let's talk about. Let's start with our first round picks. Kendall was a big surprise going that high. Having said that, he's playing in the NHL right now, so I'm sure the Penguins are pretty happy with what he did at their camp. But we'll see in the future. I remember you know Matthew Poitras making the Bruins at 19 as a smaller, not the best skating forward, and obviously Kendall is better than Poitras, but 2 years later, 3 years later, and Poitras is not in the NHL. So
the best one ever, Jerome, is Duclair out of the Rangers when he went like a goal per game to start his, and then they had to send him back, and then never, you'll be very careful about these sample sizes and what the quality of competition was like preseason, especially, and even the first handful of games.
Listen, we love Kendall. It was just the skating was too much for us to rank him, that high. Clearly, the Penguins don't care; they think it's gonna be fine. But yeah, that's the main reason why we didn't have him that high. It was more like he was in their top 32, but closer to 32 was the skating, because he's a smart player. He's a smart hockey player. He competes. He can really shoot a puck. That's one thing about him that the shooting ability was really good with him. Like he can score from different place in the ozone. Sometimes like smaller player, they have to their shot quality is not that good, so they have to get like inside, like really close to the net to score goals, and that becomes difficult because they're smaller and they're going against 6'4", 6'5" defensemen. That makes it tough. Kendall can do that, but also he can score from the outside with his shot. And I think one of his goals in the NHL was a proof of that, where it was a long distance shot by him. So the big question will be skating. The skating will be everything for Kendall going forward. It doesn't matter that he's playing in the NHL at 18. Like it's more like what is he going to be like at 21, 22, 23. So my guess is going to go back to junior after in a few. I don't know how many games he has played so far, but my guess is the smart thing would be him going back to Calgary in the WHL. Bill Zonon from the Q, again, another guy that the skating was the big concern with that player. He had a weird season. That was his third season in the Q. Never really. He was good in the second year in the Q, but not like a dominant player. I felt the difference between his first and second year in the Q was not major. I felt like he was much better in the third season, but there was still some up and down with him. Like talk about compete. Like some games his compete level was awesome, and he was great on the forecheck. Really brought like a really high end compete, but other games where he was a bit too passive. Maybe the energy level sometimes was the issue, where he didn't seem to play with the same type of energy. Maybe he got tired at some point. I know the second half of the season, his team had like a long stretch of games where they really struggle in January and February, and I think Zonon was a bit of a victim of that, where his play kind of cool off in the second half of the season. But I thought by the end of the season and the playoff, he was back to the first half version of Zonon. So that gives me hope a bit about him. He has not played yet so far this season. He's been hurt. I think he's coming back really, really soon. He's going to play for a new team in the queue with the Blainville-Boisbriand Armada. So he's going to play on a stacked team with Justin Carbonneau, Xavier Villeneuve, who's going to be a guy we talk a lot about this year. So the Armada looks like the top dog in the queue this season. And, Zonan has not played a game yet. Spencer Gill, who's a Flyers prospect, has not played this year so far, and he's not going to play until February, maybe. Like, he has a long-term injury, so but they're still good. they're not losing many hockey games so far. So Zonan was a tough one for me, based on some of his inconsistency. We had him just outside the top 32. William Orkoff at 24. When he played the first half of the season with the program, didn't look like anything. Honestly, like, he looked like a mid-round picks most nights. He looked better at Michigan. Again, another proof that the program was not really helping their young prospect. Much better at Michigan, but still, I didn't see a top 32 talent here. I thought similar to Nesbitt, more of a depth player at the NHL level. The skating is, again, an issue here, and also the skill level also I was not all that impressed with his skill level last season. What was your take, Brad, on those three first round pick here?
Yeah, so the huge thing with Kindell is that, like, he's a natural dual threat who's putting over 100 points. Okay, so on paper, it's like, that's pretty darn spectacular, and he's a very high-end playmaker to go with, as Jerome mentioned, a very high-end shooter. So mechanically speaking, he's basically the opposite of Nesbitt. Like, mechanically, it's all there already, and it has to be because he's a bit shorter. So you're expecting the coordination to be almost fully fleshed out. Now, that being said, one fascinating stat for all of you about Ben Kindell, you got to be crazy to do this. I'm a little crazy for sure. So one thing with Kindell is I looked at every entry he had with his handling rates this season, contrasted that with all the rest of the top 20 forwards, and he finished last place. His handling rates when entering the neutral or entering through the neutral zone and getting into that offensive line were very poor relative to his size at his age. That was the other red flag. So it was the skating plus the handling rate combination that needed to go up quite a bit in order for him to really have a presence. And what's fascinating is, like, we looked at him as more of a compliment as a result of that, right? Because, could he fix both? Maybe, but those are two huge variables, and that's one of the reasons we pull him back. Well, he already looks like he's fixed both to some degree. The handling rates have gone up exponentially based off of the early goings here, which is enormous for him because it means that his possession driving rates will go up as a result of that because he doesn't always have to pass a puck in the neutral zone now. So that's a huge factor here as to why he's looking as good as he is in the early going. And it's the factor as to why we look like he's a bit too late on our list relative to what we've seen so far, but we'll see. Bill Zonin, stop motion Zonin. So one of the strangest skaters mechanically you'll ever see. It's because he's a fast twitch skater with horrifically rigid hips. So, like, when you're doing a lunge and you're trying to get 90 degrees parallel to the floor there with your quad, he can't do it. He can't do that whatsoever. He's one of the shortest strides you'll ever see, but he's powerful. So it makes him look extremely strange when he's attempting to be in motion. And admittedly, from a scouting perspective, it could throw us off a bit. It's like, what? We've never seen this before. What is going on with this player? And then you factor in his age, one of the older players. And so the skating is certainly going to be a limiting factor. The other factor that's fascinating, though, and a good thing, is that his area, short area playmaking, in terms of execution rates, is spectacular. This is a player who's very good under pressure in small spaces when it comes to finding options. That will help him tremendously because he's not nimble. This is not a player who's going to be going Nathan McKinnon dancing around players. So he must have that quality, and he does. There is definitely some secondary offense, and he does play the game quote unquote the right way, meaning he plays with a tremendous amount of energy, but he doesn't finish his checks near the degree that you would want to see in this style of forward. You want him to be a power playmaker, but when you watch him, you can't label him that yet. If he can develop into that, then you might have something. Will Horkoff, unbelievably raw. What Jerome mentioned, the skating needs to come another level, but he's a 6'5" kid, huge. One of the deciding factors why I think he went as high as he did, interview process. Jerome, like the feedback was he's like one of the best interviews of all time. Like apparently the kid has a tremendous charisma, high character. Obviously has established blood there. His dad played for a long time there, and he's there with Detroit right now. So, the mental qualities are there. The physical qualities need to catch up to the mental qualities, essentially. And that gets to Peyton Kettles, where, again, we're talking raw, Jerome. Like raw, untapped, unpolished, but at least the toolkit, we've been talking about bad skating bases for a bit here. The skating base with Kettles is certainly in the right direction, and you can say that with Trethaway as well, or Trethaway at least can skate the game to some degree there. So the question is, like, what do like Peyton Kettles, Jerome, you had more time for him than I did. What do you think was the better, more dominant traits within his game that you saw?
Well, you look at this size skating combo was really interesting. I think he defends, pretty well. He's also really young for the class. He was one of the youngest. He's a September birthday, so maybe a lot more runway here with him improving his game. The main issue, I think, I guess that we discussed last year was his play with the puck. Is it going to be good enough? About his decision making also with the puck was also a bit mixed at times, but he's young, and he's young for this class, so maybe with the right development team he can improve on that. But I like the skating for his size. He's got some physicality too. What was funny about him is that his team on the power play, they would use him in front of the net. Zdeno Chara style.
Fair like that too.
Yeah.
So
he's a big kid, so obviously it makes sense to put him in front of the net. Very unlikely that's going to be his role at the NHL level, but it was always funny to see him in front of the net with his with that frame. Also, he has a really long stick. So he was using his stick, to receive pass, a bit like Dustin Byfuglien, a bit in front of the net. I had probably more time for him than you, but I didn't really expect him to go 39 in the draft. I thought he'd be more of a 50s, late second round type of pick. So I'm actually curious to see how he does this year in the WHL. Trethaway, I don't know if I agree with the skating. I didn't like his skating as much as you. My biggest problem with him is that the first time I saw him, I thought when he was 16, I thought he was quite good. And the more I watched, the less I like. And it was the same case this year. Well, this past season in his draft year. The more I watch him, the less I like. And is it a curse from the program where he gets away from the program and he gets better? Maybe. But I didn't have a lot of faith in what I saw last year with him. So maybe getting away from the program will be good. So to be honest, a lot of the program kids, we are gonna have to make sure about them. To watch them this season to see where they are with their games. Like, was last year the truth, or like is there a new version of themselves? And Trethaway is going to be like this. We talk about Fondrick early on. He's another guy we're going to have to keep watching. Murtagh, same thing. McKinney. So a lot of their guys didn't progress last season, according to me. But
not just
we'll
you.
See. Yeah.
Most people were not very happy with the program last year. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So that was my big problem with Treadaway. It was like I just didn't think he progressed over his 2 years with the program. Can he turn this around this season? Maybe. Like we have seen it with Van Sagi last season, Epperson, and like many guys that left the program who really they got good coaching and they got better. So maybe Treadaway will be the next one. Gabriel Deg, goalie. To be honest, I was shocked he went in the third round with Pittsburgh. I still have time for that goalie, but I was still very surprised he went that high. This was not an easy season for him. Like he got a bit better in the second half, but like I saw him in the Q this year. Like there's still a lot of work here to be done with that
He's
goalie.
raw. He's raw for sure.
He's raw, and then it's his fourth season in the Q, and still like he's giving up a lot of goals. And we can say Victoriaville is not the best team. Yeah, like they were pretty bad last year.
Understatement of the century, Jerome. It's not an easy team to cheer for by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah, I mean they're better this year, and he's still giving up a lot of goals. So it's almost like when things are not going well for him, like man, everything goes in. But he's a good athlete. He's got great size. We did a full breakdown on him last year, so if people want to go check that out. But we talk about him in our goalie episode for our final rankings. He's not committed yet, but I really want this guy to go play college hockey. Like I really want him to go play 2-3 years in college and just be patient. Like the tools are there to become maybe one day NHL goalie, but man, he has so much work to do. And like I don't know if he's going to go that route, but if my advice to all the CHL goalie, if you can go college, go college. I think it would be really good for him. He needs time because I feel like there's no way for me he can play AHL next season. Like he would be probably put in the East Coast League. Not everyone is like going to be really thrilled about that. I don't think it's a bad option for goalies if they can't get ice time at the AHL level, like we saw with Sebastian Casa with Detroit. They couldn't get him ice time, sent him to the East Coast, and he got he played a lot and got better, and things were going well for him the past 2 seasons. So yeah, Deg. It's gonna be really interesting to see the development path for him and starting next season. Does he go back to the Q in his overage season? I don't know if that's a good idea. I really would like to see him go play college. And elsewhere, like the rest of their picks, not anyone really super exciting for me that I really had time for. So maybe we can finish the Pittsburgh review, Brad, with maybe your last take, maybe on Gabriel Deg here.
Oh, sure. I'll mention Quinn Bashane. So maybe we'll kill Doc. We'll sneak in kill Doc. So Deg, it's Jerome's point. So like this player, when he's on, he's really on, and when he's off, he's really off. So it's one of those situations where you're hoping obviously Pittsburgh thinks the real version would be the one that had some amazing peak performances this past season, where it was just him versus the world, really. Like his defensive structure in Victoriaville is not something you would want to see your NHL team adapt. Let's put it that way. So with him, even just like some of the most basic aspects of the position are still work in progress, meaning like he doesn't always even know when he's on angle. Like he has a very difficult time being able to micro adjust and recognize when he needs to make micro shuffles or shift into space because he is slightly off angle. That was very pronounced in preseason. Try to take not much for goalies in preseason in any capacity. It takes them time to mentally like dial in and get going. But for Pittsburgh fans who saw him there, that's basically what he can look like when he is fully operational in the queue as well. So that needs to be cleaned out of his game as quickly as humanly possible. We did do a huge breakdown of him in the Black Book there, discussing more of him from a technical perspective. But like one of his big issues as well is like he can laterally transfer, but he sits so long in his RVH coming off posts. Like, and again, this happens to a lot of goalies, like especially his age. He's got to learn how to trust his skating at a higher level, stay on his skates longer. He can get beat when it comes to feints. Like he's not as poised as you're looking for. Burke Hood's got some of that in him too. Both him and Hood can drop prematurely, and that gets them in trouble. But he's a battler. The kid battles. I'll give him that. Quinn Bouchane, like, average puck size moving defenseman, but a pretty intelligent player. Looks prototypical junior, but could be one of those sneaky players down the road where if things go very right, you might see him in a depth role. And Kel Dock put up tremendous numbers in the BCHL for Sherwood. Big thing with him is like he plays more like a Euro style. Like he's kind of a soft player, but he's smart and he's talented. And seventh round pick, that's something. Like admittedly, he really does not look like an NHL player. There's a reason he was a seventh round pick, but in the seventh, like at least get something that has skill and something that is produced. And Kildock has done that. So, it's bizarre. One of the strangest classes I think I can ever remember, honestly, like one of the most bizarre classes on paper you'll ever see. But Kindell already looks like he's headed in the direction he needs to for that pick to be not only justified, but a good one. Bill Zonin, we have time for him, Jerome. Like Bill Zonin certainly could play in a depth role if things go right. No question about it. Like maybe even he could be a supplement in your top six, I think, in spurts, depending on your team composition and chemistry. He can pass a puck and he's a smart player and he really cares. Like he brings a ton of energy. And Will Horkoff, raw project, but if things go right, he's going to be an exceptional net front presence. Excellent neutral zone one-touch process and ability in transition, which is very important for his direct development because he's not a good skater. He's not going to be a carrier through the neutral zone. So he has to find options quickly, but he can. So there is a bit of a base there that he can work around. And the rest of their draft, like just so raw. Like Kettles is unbelievably raw. Dag is unbelievably raw. Trethaway, as you mentioned, total stall development. We have no idea what Charlie Trethaway actually is right now. It's just one of those situations. That's the main parts of their class. And I mean, let's put it this way. I think Pittsburgh's they're stuck in a very difficult position right now, and it's nobody's fault. Like you got to give Crosby his opportunity. If he's not going to get traded, you got to try to help give him the push. They do look better than expected this season right now. And they had brutal injury there, suffered to Raquel, which might really put a dip in their ability to actually stay relevant here over the coming months, see if they can actually hold it as a bubble team. But, they need, this is a franchise that is desperate for top end blue chip talent. Like with the exception of Kindell, it's very unlikely they get that out of this pool they drafted. And if Crosby keeps playing like this, it's a good chance they're outside the top five. And this is like a weaker class early. So this is danger territory for Pittsburgh. This is very, very dangerous stuff for Pittsburgh, but there's not much admittedly that they can do right now. You just gotta kind of go with it.
The number one reason why they should trade Crosby is because he's destroying their ability to get a high draft.
It's unbelievable how he's ridiculous. The player's just ridiculous. So
yeah. All right, let's move on to the Washington Capitals, and that will be our last team we talk about today, and will be the 32nd NHL team. We're reviewing their draft class. So let's take a look at what Washington did at the draft here. There you go. Let's move. There you go. Lyndon Lakovic was a guy we talked a lot about him last year in our final ranking video, Brad. He went a bit lower than as much as we argued about him, we all thought he'd be top as a top 20, top 22 pick in the draft. He did drop a few more spots to 27. Milton Gastrin at 37, really nice pick by Washington. Actually, another guy that dropped a bit. Like I thought Milton Gastrin was going to go for sure top 32. He's playing really well in Sweden so far this season in the Allsvenskan. So that's a really nice pick by Washington. Maxim Schaefer out of Germany. I mean, I find Maxim Schaefer a very typical Washington Capitals draft pick, where they take a big raw forward. They did it with Eric Smatiko last season. They did it with Ilya Protas the year before. Actually, Protas was also last year, I believe. But anyway, the Caps have done a really good job at developing those power forwards. So maybe Maxim Schaefer is the next in line. We'll see. He's playing in the Q this year with Chikrimi. He's doing fine so far. One of the reasons we didn't have him that high was we thought maybe the skill level was a bit too. There's some limitation with that skill level. So Washington got him in the third round. That's a fine pick. And we'll see what their development team can do with him and make him get his game to the next level. Because he definitely has a size that NHL team wants in their depth forward. So let's wait and see. And the last two picks, I don't really know them, so I'm not gonna touch on them. So Brad, I'll give you the floor here. Maybe talk about their first three picks here in Lakovic, Gastrin, and Schaefer.
Yeah, well, so Lakovic is like the ultimate wild card player in this draft. Like if he hits, the Caps do it again, right? If he hits, he's top 10 in the redraft all day, and everybody's gonna be like, how did he fall? But this is the Oscar allows in this class. This player doesn't always show up, doesn't always compete at the level you want to see. Doesn't like the amount of talent he has and the toolkit and the package. Like he should just dictate. Now he is on a very poor team. He was on a horrible team. Like Moose Jaw was not good in any capacity. He's a type of player too who really needed a driving center, and he didn't have that. And so the bet is if you give him that, he can take off. And some people didn't want to give him that bet, and that's why he fell, because, again, there's just so many mental inconsistencies with him. But from a technical perspective, like the handling ability, the driving, the possession driving sequences we saw from him when he was on his game, he was doing things that were just operationally spectacular. One issue with him is he reminds me of one of those types of players where it's either perfect or it's not happening. There's no in between with me. He doesn't have much in the way of grit. There's not that grit factor to him ain't there. Like it's almost like Philly, the Filatov quote, Nikita Filatov, when he was like, Philly don't do rebounds. There's a bit of that here. Not as pronounced. It's not nearly as bad as it was with Filatov, but it's like that instinct where it's either mechanically flawless or he just has no interest in it. He might be just too much of a perfectionist based off of how he plays, to be honest with you. That said, like occasionally, I remember one play against Saskatoon specifically where he was defending and he managed to win a puck battle, strip the player, fly through the neutral zone, and he had one of the most sophisticated give and go sequences and 2-on rusher I'd seen that season, where like it was a play that simply like Roger McQueen could not do. Roger McQueen could not generate that level of technical play that Lakovic did, right? But Lakovic went way later, and that's because the drown-out factor, the lack of having that killer instinct that you want to see in a player who's as big as he is with the talent that he possesses. However, if there was ever a team that can develop and find a way to untap it, you bet money on Washington to do it. Washington's one of the best development teams in the league, and they know exactly what Lakovic is, I'm sure, and we'll see what happens. Milton Gastrin is like the inverse of Lakovic, like basically the total opposite player. Like he's raw mechanically relative to Lakovic, a bit sloppy, but he's a hockey player. He's incredibly determined, smart, plays at a high pace. He's a hybrid player that can be extremely determined, gritty, but then he can also do some impressive things from a finesse perspective, set up his teammates. He's kind of a very well-rounded master of nothing type of player. But he certainly looks like. Now, one thing I'll say though, Jerome, internationally, like he did leave me underwhelmed. Like especially with his shot, like the mechanics in his shot, he's got to get his handling and shooting rates up if he's going to hold long term. Maxime Schaefer, I watched him in the DL too. I watched him in the DEL, and I watched him internationally. To Jerome's point, like the execution rates, they're a bit lower than what you want to see, but he's big and he's toolsy. He can skate. He's got size. And in his best performances, he does look like he could be a depth player for a team that pots in 15-20 for you. So that basically sums up Washington. And, Washington, like, given that they had really the first three picks to choose from there, like, I mean, they took for sure talent-wise BPA at 27 in the highest swing, highest reward, lowest floor player in the draft. And we talk about scouting philosophy, scouting strategy. Look what Washington did with 37. They took one of the most well-rounded, versatile, high-floor players in the draft to counteract what they did at 27. Try to give them an opportunity there where if Lakovic misses, Gastrin can still have the opportunity to hit.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to just take all of your picks with like boom bust type selection, because if you miss on all of them, you don't get any player from a draft class. Not great for a team. So yeah, Lakovic, boom bust, Gastrin, pretty safe bet that he will play in a depth role. And Schaefer, you never know. Maybe he'll end up being a depth piece as well. So, all right, that was our review of the.
I feel like the Metro had half the picks. How many felt way longer than the other ones? Maybe it's because we're tired, but.
That's a long podcast. And as one of your friends told you, like this is for the psycho, Brad.
It is. It's for the crazies.
Yeah. All right. So that's gonna wrap up this episode. Thank God, because I'm really hungry and tired. So thanks for watching. If you watch every single minute of this podcast, thanks a lot. We'll be back next week for another episode. Hopefully not as long as this one. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for our YouTube channel. We got more video coming up as well. Tomorrow, which should be Thursday, we'll have the Detroit Red Wings top 10 prospect video out. This past Monday, we had the Dallas Star top 10 prospect video out as well. So we're trying to, have some content pretty much not every day, but like at least 3 times a week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And yeah, that's it. Brad, thanks a lot. And we'll see you guys very soon for another video on our YouTube channel. So see you guys around.
Thanks, everyone.